This session, one lawmaker wants to change who has the final say over cannabis and says it's time that marijuana is no longer a controlled substance in Nevada.
We don't need to have several levels of regulation on a substance now that we know is part and parcel of our community and part and parcel of our economy.
Assemblyman Ruben De Silva of Las Vegas is proposing a bill that, if passed, could put an end to a debate tied up in court. Why marijuana remains a controlled substance in the state of Nevada and who gets that final say.
We need to remove the Nevada Board of Pharmacy statutorily now from having oversight over cannabis products and cannabis derivatives. It would then go to the Cannabis Compliance Board.
Assemblyman De Silva wants the Cannabis Compliance Board to have full control over marijuana in the state. The Nevada Board of Pharmacy continues to classify marijuana as a Schedule I drug. The feds on the DEA's website define a Schedule I drug as drugs with no currently accepted medical use and a high potential for abuse. The ACLU sued over this after a barber was denied a license and argues Nevada's constitution protects medical marijuana, and voters legalized medicinal marijuana in 2000 and recreational use in 2017. The Board of Pharmacy's legal counsel wouldn't comment to Fox 5 on the suit, but argued in court voter ballots didn't change how weed gets classified. A Clark County judge sided with the ACLU, but it's since been appealed.
The criminalization of this substance, people's lives have been destroyed. And now we're at a day and age now where we're moving past that. We are reforming the way that we look at cannabis and marijuana in our society, in our culture, in our communities, in our economy.
The response from GOP Assembly members tonight, a rep says, we look forward to working with Democrats to find the best ways to open Nevada back up for business. Of course, we'll have to review testimony and input from the community. We want to look forward to reviewing the facts and deciding what is best, working with our colleagues across the aisle. And we also reached out to a number of members of the Nevada Board of Pharmacy, but have yet to hear back about the bill.